Yeah, all day. Yeah, I think I'll come back to that point about utilitarianism, which is, I'll flip on that. Kevin Coval, poet, educator, founder of Louder Than a Bomb, the Chicago Youth Poetry Festival. I'm going to talk a little about tips to being an artist. I think one of the things that I learned from one of my mentors, Haki Madhubuti, whose teacher was Gwendolyn Brooks, and she used to say all the time that the sole responsibility of a young writer or a young artist is to tell the story that's in front of your nose. And I think a lot of times we think that being an artist means you have to use your imagination and develop things that are abstract, but really I think the sight of our lives is ripe for inspiration. And so to look around you and document and represent the world in which you inhabit and inherit and really hope to make better is a really valuable space to begin creation. And so, shout out to Gwendolyn Brooks and Haki Madhubuti all day. Tip number 2, I would say, is that, you're not really reinventing the wheel, although you will be innovative. So you have to know your form. You have to know the history in which you're creating a little bit. So I write poems and I stay reading poems even though I hated poems for a long time because I thought they were done only by dead white dudes who got lost in the forest. But really, hip hop taught me that there was this right non-European canon of literature that I also partake in. And so, I go to the library, I spend time with artists in my field looking at what they do, whether it's dope or not. I'm garnering information, I'm garnering inspiration from really just partaking in this tradition. I'm a student, and I think artists have to remain students and open to the worlds around them. I think discipline is a super important aspect for any artist. I get up at the same time every morning. I wake up at 7:23 and make 2 cups of coffee and then get to writing. And I think very few artists are going to have the privilege and luxury of having someone pay them to make art. And so you have to believe in yourself and have to stay motivated and engaged in your own self-discipline in order to make that work. There really isn't a factory that artists get to punch into. So your 9 to 5, your grind has to be initially, especially from your own internal will and desire to do basically tips 3 and 4. So tip 4 is don't be whack. There's a lot of bad art in the world, so don't contribute to that heap of garbage, and I think the ways not to be whack is, tips 3 through 1, and then really this final tip is to be fresh. I think that any person has the ability to have ingenuity. To develop a new idea, your gaze on the world and then how you represent and represent that vision is ultimately what's going to be your contribution to a discussion. Art, of course, is utilitarian. It's a tool in the world to engage in public and civic discourse. I don't think the artist is someone who remains on a hilltop and is isolated from the people. The artist, especially now, is fully immersed in the city. And so that idea of being fresh, of using your art to say something new, I think, you possess that within you at all times, and you just have to manifest. So basically, those are my tips. So yeah, bonus tip. And this idea is in Haki Madhubuti's Black Poetics for the Many to Come, but he talks about the necessity of art being a utilitarian tool, that it has a function in society, that art is absolutely a valuable thing to make and do in the world. And so for me, that art can and should begin to shape and interact with civic and public conversation is essential. That art is not passive. All art is political, all actions are political, and so that our art can be a way and a tool for us to shape and reshape the worlds around us. If we don't like something, then we got to change the conversation. And I think art has a valuable import and importance in helping to shape and reshape a public dialogue. And so I think it challenges the notion, I think, typically that artists have of themselves, or when we imagine what an artist does, it's the kind of drunk, lazy mug who waits for inspiration at moonlight on a certain night in order to really make. And I think that that's lame and corny. And I think artists are, when they're good, when they're dope, they are incredibly disciplined to stay engaged in public conversation. And so I think that to make your art a tool, and to use that tool to make this place better, to make the city fresher, and to make it the space that we want to be, where there's equity for more and equity for all, I think art has that power in our city and in our country.